Hey folks, this is Kalani. Something pretty huge just happened with the latest Shadowlands beta build. A zone which had seemingly very little to do, or really much meaning at all, was just thrust into the center of endgame progression for the next expansion. I'm of course talking about the MAW. We haven't been given too much to work with for this mysterious zone, besides the fact that the entrance to Torghast is here, and we have a lot of story quests that send us to and from the MAW, but the key vendor for the MAW was just updated with some very interesting rewards, which absolutely every player is going to be interested in. So let's take a closer look and see why all of us will be spending lots of time in the MAW zone in the next expansion. Before we jump in, be sure to pop by our live stream sometime over at twitch.tv/KalaniTV. We stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday at 12 PM PST, and we always love chatting with you wonderful folks, so I hope to see you soon. Alrighty, down in the MAW, you'll find a very special NPC. This NPC is special partly because they're the only friendly thing in this entire zone, and partly because they sell all manner of goodies related to the MAW. Let's talk about some of the big ones first, and then we can talk about the other random bits and bobs they sell later on. So the big one is going to be the item that allows you to put a socket on a piece of gear of your choice. It's called the Spatial Realignment Apparatus, and it will cost you 2,500 Stygia. That probably doesn't mean anything to you just yet. Don't worry, we'll talk about the currency in this video as well, but this item works in more or less the same way as the item Rathian sold in 8.3, but there are a few extra restrictions for sockets in Shadowlands. Sockets can only be found or can only be applied to items in the helm, neck, bracer, belt or ring slots, so we can't have sockets on everything like we could in BFA. The good news is that means you only need to buy 6 of these socket items if you have all of your best in slot gear, and the only thing left is to just slap a socket on it. That's fine, you only need 6. That shouldn't take too long overall. I am curious to see how many players will buy sockets for gear that is not their best in slot, just as they're gearing up for that quick gem slot boost of stats to maybe help push a new raid boss or whatever else. This one item being on the vendor tied to the MAW zone, which is purchasable with a currency you can only get in the MAW zone, already adds so much value to the zone as a whole, but it's not just guaranteed sockets that will bring you down into the MAW. There is another item available from this vendor which is very different and has some incredible potential. The Manifest Aethys Hunt will cost you 500 Stygia, and it allows you to add a conduit that you do not have to your collection, or upgrade an existing conduit by 1 rank. The upgraded conduit will be randomly selected from your lowest rank conduits. This is very interesting for a few reasons. First, this item can give you any conduit from any source that your character can use without actually having to specifically look or farm for it. That itself is absolutely huge, and we'll talk about why in a second, but it also allows you to upgrade your conduits, albeit in a bit of a roundabout random fashion, but you can also upgrade conduits with a farmable currency found in the MAW. That could be even crazier, but let's talk about unlocking conduits first. If you're not too sure where conduits come from, they're kind of like essences from Battle for Azeroth. You can find some of them in dungeons, some of them come from PvP, some of them come from world quests, reputation vendors, raids. Pretty much every max level content type could reward conduits. The dev team also said that there will be multiple sources for each conduit, so it's a bit of a treasure hunt once again, and you'll need to farm certain areas or types of content to collect and upgrade conduits. But what if a conduit that you want only comes from PvP? Maybe it comes from raids as well, but you don't raid. So if you don't raid or PvP, how can you get the conduit that comes from raids and PvP? This item from Venari, the vendor in the MAW, lets you do exactly that. You can collect any conduit that you haven't already picked up. Technically, if you wanted to, you could just collect all of the conduits from this vendor and by farming the MAW and call it a day. That's probably the least efficient way of actually doing it, but it's an option. If you played during Battle for Azeroth, can you imagine if there was a vendor that allowed you to purchase random essences that you didn't have yet? You could get Conflict and Strife or Blood of the Enemy without having to do the PvP grind. There would still be a grind involved, it would just be a different kind of grind, and it may have taken longer in some cases, but at least you wouldn't have been forced into PvP. That is the magic of this item. You now have a source of any and every conduit. The only caveat, the only drawback, is that it's random, and you'll be spending Stygia, which you probably want to keep for other things. Again, it's probably the least ideal way of collecting conduits. You don't really want to do this unless you absolutely hate the idea of collecting the conduit from the proper source, but at least you have that option now. Now, upgrading your conduits is a different beast. What we know of conduits so far is that their power level, or their rank, is tied directly to their item level. So the higher item level conduit you collect, the higher the rank will be and the more powerful that conduit's effect will be. You're supposed to be able to collect these higher ranked conduits, take them back to your sanctum, plug them in, and boom, it will auto-magically upgrade that conduit for you. But suddenly, we have this other method of upgrading. The real problem here is that the upgraded conduit is chosen at random, and it's always going to be your lowest ranked conduits. That tells me that this item is not supposed to be used as a primary source of upgrades for your conduits. It's going to be easier, faster, and more efficient to upgrade your conduits in the proper way to get higher item level conduits from doing higher difficulty content. But what happens when you cap out at your play level? If you need to do mythic raidings to get your next rank up on a conduit, but you don't do mythic raiding, is that it for you now? Can you just not go any higher on that conduit? Well, hold on a second. This item will upgrade any conduit as long as it's your lowest. So if you have every conduit up to the max level that you yourself can get by playing the game at the highest difficulty you are able to, this item suddenly offers an ulterior upgrade path that's available to anyone, and with enough farming in the MAW, you can reach a conduit rank which is on par with the players doing the very hardest content. Again, it might not be ideal. It might not be the fastest way to do it. You have to make a few choices about how to spend your Stygia, but now everyone has an option to get the highest ranked conduit, even if you don't do high level Mythic Plus or high rated arena or mythic raiding. I know I personally won't focus on the PvP conduits, for example, so this gives me a different option for upgrading those. And the more conduits you upgrade naturally in the proper path, the fewer conduits that will be at your lowest ranks, so there's less RNG when you pick up this item to start upgrading things. If you rely entirely on this vendor, an item to upgrade your conduits, that's where you're going to find a problem. It's going to be a huge grind, a painful grind, and honestly, it's probably just not worth your time. But remember, this isn't the only option for upgrading your conduits. In fact, it looks like this is more of a backup for the system as a whole, just in case you aren't able to progress further by yourself in the proper way. It could also work as a catch-up for alts if Stygia is easier to come by later on in the expansion. Personally, I think this is a great addition to the system. The RNG in it is kind of annoying, but I feel like the RNG is actually there to prevent abuse of the system. If you could pick what conduit this upgraded every single time, players would just flock to them all and upgrade their best one right away. Again, that's not what this item is intended to do. It gives you an ulterior collection path and a different option for upgrading conduits that you don't want to upgrade by getting higher item level conduits. That is, of course, assuming that Blizzard didn't just change the entire conduit system without telling us, because, well, that would just be silly now, wouldn't it? Let's quickly talk about the other goodies you can buy from this vendor. The Cipher of Relocation costs 25 Stygia and gives you a quick teleport back to Venari's Refuge, which is the only actual safe place in the entire MAW zone. I would always recommend keeping at least one of these on you so you can teleport to safety whenever you need to. The mysteriously thrumming orb costs 250 Stygia, and when you use it, it gives you 250 Stygia. Now, during early testing, you actually had a chance to lose half of your total Stygia currency if you died in the MAW zone. This item was a bit of an insurance deal. You can save 250 Stygia in each orb, so you won't lose it upon death. I've actually died a couple times in the MAW without losing Stygia, so either losing Stygia is bugged or simply doesn't happen anymore. So this item could either be a complete Stygia lifesaver or something that gets removed before launch. The Soul Twinning Scepter gives you and a friendly target 5% increased stats for 10 minutes, but you will lose the buff if you are ever more than 100 yards apart. A nice bonus for groups who are playing together, providing you actually, stay together. That will cost you 50 Stygia for 50 charges, which isn't too bad of a deal. The Oil of Ethereal Force increases your movement speed and makes you invisible for about 15 seconds on a 5-minute cooldown. That will also cost you 50 Stygia. Quite useful if you need to get through a densely populated area of the MAW, not too great otherwise. The Oublian Cipher enhances your defenses against the River of Souls, reducing its frequency by 80%. This is pretty important if you are ever travelling around the area of the MAW. While you are in the River of Souls, you gain a stacking debuff that reduces your damage done by 5% and increases your damage taken by 5%, and it just keeps on stacking the longer you're in the river. So this item will make your treks across the River of Souls much less painful. The Anima Flow Stabilizer unlocks a teleporter from Venari's Refuge, that's the safe spot, over to a hotspot for quests called the Tremaculum. Anything that can help you move faster in the MAW is always going to be nice. There is also a legendary effect that is specific to the MAW. When you kill monsters in the MAW, you gain increased damage toward that monster, and it stacks up to 5 times. The effect resets if you kill a different monster though. This could be super useful if you are ever expecting to farm the exact same monster over and over again. Not too great otherwise. And then the last item besides the very two at the bottom is the Possibility Matrix. This gives you more anima options in Torghast and ensures that with every anima orb you open, you will see at least 2 options at the very minimum. Now you probably noticed that most of these items require a certain reputation level with Venari. To earn favour with this broker, you need to complete her quests and tasks, and she also offers up several daily quests. So this is definitely one of those daily grind type deals. Pop down to the MAW every day, see what Venari wants, get a little bit of rep, gather up some Stygia, and work your way towards the goodies at the end of her rep farm. The socket item and the conduit item are both at her maximum rep level, so we definitely won't be making use of those for the first few weeks of the expansion at the very least. And then we come to the currency, Stygia. What is it, how do you get it, and how long it will take to farm up your sockets? Good questions, good questions. Stygia comes from the MAW, and only the MAW. You can earn some from doing Venari's daily quests. Each daily quest that you can see right now offers 50 Stygia, and there are 2 to pick up each day. You can get some from killing rare monsters in the MAW, and you can also find world quests out in the zone, but they're not on your map. Those tend to reward maybe about 100. It's been fluctuating quite a bit, so you will have to walk around to try and find those. But those are the main sources of Stygia in the MAW zone itself, so the typical things really. You used to be able to farm Stygia just by killing random mobs, but they seem to have nerfed that and it doesn't seem to be worth it at all anymore. You can also earn some Stygia from the Twisting Corridors section of Torghast. You can earn each layer's loot once per week, so the higher you climb, the more Stygia you can earn. I imagine as we get further into each patch and further through the expansion, most of your Stygia earnings will come from Torghast. It starts at 120 for the very first layer, and it only climbs from there. So collecting 2,500 for a socket is going to take quite a while for sure, and again, it's going to depend heavily on how high up Torghast you can climb. The higher you go up Torghast, the faster you can get your sockets. But that's all I want to talk about in this video. For anyone wondering what the entire point of the MAW zone is in the Shadowlands expansion, it's to get sockets and to play Torghast. That seems to be about it right now. What do you think of sockets being available to buy from a vendor again? How about that extra collection and upgrading pathway for conduits? Do you think these are good additions to the game, or do you think they only serve to give the MAW zone a purpose right now? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to explore what's left of the beta, hang out with us live, or maybe even help us get ready for Shadowlands, you can find us over at twitch.tv/KalaniTV. We stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 12 PM PST, and watching the stream and coming to say hi is one of the best ways you can support the channel right now, and if you ever wanted to be included in the long list of names at the end of every video, a subscription on Twitch is the easiest way to make that happen. You get a free sub to any Twitch channel if you have Amazon Prime too, so be sure to take advantage of that. A big thank you to everyone who's subscribed on Twitch already, and to our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, well, now you know how. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.